Madam Speaker, for 7 years, this government has promised to build faster, but the only thing that's accelerated is a backlog of delays and frustration from the people of Ontario. Today, I rise to speak to Bill 17, the Protect Ontario by Building Faster and Smarter Act 2025, with a focus on Schedule 2 and 5. And I rise not just as the transportation critic, but as a voice for communities like Scarborough-Guildwood, who are tired of being an afterthought in Ontario's infrastructure plans. Bill 17 asks communities to trust the government that has ignored them, municipalities to surrender to a minister who wouldn't answer questions, and families to uproot themselves for a promise that keeps breaking. The government claims it aims to streamline transit development and enhance infrastructure, but we must critically examine the implications of these amendments and hold this government accountable for their impact on local communities across Ontario. So let's first discuss Schedule 2, which amends the Building Transit Faster Act 2020. This schedule replaces the term Priority Transit Project with Provincial Transit Project, effectively broadening the scope to include all transit projects authorized by Metrolinx. Madam Speaker, this government is rebranding failure as speed. By broadening the definition to provincial transit projects, Schedule 2 lets Metrolinx bypass essential due process, including expropriation protections. This is a significant change, Madam Speaker, that warrants clear oversight. They couldn't finish the 4 original priority projects, and now this government wants control over all transit projects in Ontario. And all of this comes on the heels of a budget that tells us exactly where this government's priorities lie, and it's not with transit riders. While ridership rebounds and demands grow, the government kept transportation funding flat, ignoring skyrocketing costs, growth, and the public urgent need for safe, accessible transit. The government is rebranding failure as speed. They are not speeding up transit. They are steamrolling over communities. Madam Speaker, you can't pave over accountability and call it progress. Now to Schedule 5, which amends the Metrolinx Act. The definition of municipal agencies is expanded to allow the minister to demand information from municipalities about transit and transit-oriented communities. It also limits Toronto's ability to independently plan or lead rapid transit projects under Metrolinx jurisdictions. At first glance, these adjustments might seem like coordination, but they raise serious concerns about centralized control, local governance, and public transparency. Madam Speaker, the government says they want to build smarter, but is it smarter to silence the people who know the communities best? Toronto's own TTC, Madam Speaker, is being sidelined. The province is overriding local knowledge and community engagement. This is not a partnership, it is a takeover. When you remove the brakes, you don't just go faster, Madam Speaker, you lose control. That's what Bill 17 does. It strips away local checks and hands the wheel to a government with a track record of staring us into delay after delay and dysfunction. Madam Speaker, let's remember, the Ontario Line, Scarborough Subway, Eglinton Crosstown West, and Yonge North Subway Extension are still incomplete. with little or no updates, no transparency from Metrolinx, no accountability from this government. So while I acknowledge that Bill 17 presents some potential benefits, including economic growth and job creation, we must face the reality of this government's track record. Madam Speaker, what makes this government think they can handle over 50-something transit projects across Ontario when they couldn't even manage the 4 priority projects outlined in Bill 171? Because let's not forget, and this is hot off the press, we only just found out that the same government behind Bill 17 quietly cancelled a 25-year operating deal between Metrolinx and OnExpress. No public explanation, no financial breakdown, not even a meeting of Metrolinx's own board. This was the largest P3 transit contract in Ontario's history, and it was abandoned behind closed doors yet again. All I could say, I'm not surprised, based on the government's track record. Madam Speaker, I said it then and I'll say it again. I want this to be on the record 2 or 3 times. I'm not surprised, but I'm deeply disappointed. After 7 years of this government, Metrolinx can't make well on a promise, let alone a subway line. Madam Speaker, we cannot allow this government to expand control over every transit project in Ontario when its track record shows delay, mismanagement, and broken promises. Residents in Scarborough-Guildwood and across Ontario have been vocal about their frustration. They fear their voices are being erased, their communities reshaped without their input. And Madam Speaker, across Ontario, we are just exhausted. Not just by traffic, but by this government's broken promises. They are waiting on platforms for trains that never arrived. They are stuck on congested roads, late for work, late for picking up their kids, spending more time in traffic than they do with their families. Seniors in Scarborough who once relied on LRT now walk longer distances or take multiple buses just to get to medical appointments. I hear these complaints come into my constant office on a daily basis. Scarborough, Madam Speaker, it's going through a horrible connectivity crisis with no end in sight of any one of the 3 projects in Scarborough to be completed. Small business owners along Eglinton West have closed their doors after years of watching customers disappear behind construction fencing and false hope. Small business in the Golden Mile area in Scarborough are also forced to close their doors due to a decrease in foot traffic and revenue. This is not just an infrastructure issue, Madam Speaker. It is a quality of life issue. It is an economic issue. It is an equity issue. These delays don't just cost time, Madam Speaker. They cost people their livelihoods, their patience, and their trust. In Toronto, streetcar delays are up, just like everything else, are up in Ontario, 33% in some parts of the city. Storefronts have permanently closed because they simply couldn't wait anymore. And in Scarborough, a transit desert, it is a transit desert, Madam Speaker, has grown deeper after the LRT was shut down prematurely with no reliable replacement in place. Madam Speaker, Ontarians deserve a government that treats public transit like public good, not a political bargaining chip. During the last election, we made it clear we'd invest in safety, mental health supports, and platform infrastructure. This government instead walk away from those commitments, choosing cuts and silence over rail service for the people that lives and call Ontario their home. But nonetheless, we are told to be patient, to wait, that help is coming. But for Ontarians who have waited 7 years, watch their commutes grow longer, their streets more dangerous, and their neighborhoods more unaffordable, and patience has run out. This government hasn't built faster or smarter. It's built confusion, delay, and despair. And nowhere is this more concerning than discussions of gentrification. Transit-oriented development often leads to rise in rents and then displacement of low and middle income families, Madam Speaker, in Scarborough areas around hubs like Scarborough Town Centre and Malvern Town Centre are on the brink of change. We welcome that change, Madam Speaker. Of course we welcome that change, but we do not welcome displacement of our people. Bill 17 offers no guarantees that the communities they are talking about will actually include the people who already live in them. You can't call it a transit community if the people who need transit the most can't afford to live there. That's why on April 9, 2024, I tabled Bill 184, my private member's bill to amend the Metrolinx Act. Today, I want to emphasize the critical importance of Part 2 of my bill, which addresses urgent concerns about gentrification in Scarborough and across Ontario, particularly for low and middle-income families striving to become homeowners in transit-oriented communities. My bill proposed a modest 20% affordable housing requirement on surplus Metrolinx land. This government couldn't even say yes to that. Madam Speaker, transit development must be about more than speed. It must be about who we are building it for, and that is the people that lives in Ontario. And must we not forget, it's the same people that voted us to come back in this House after our recent snap election. No, sorry, tariff snap election. What kind of Ontario are we shaping? One where low and middle income families are pushed out of their neighbourhoods, or one where infrastructure serves the public, not just private profit? Displacement and the loss of our social fabric are tragedies that will have lasting impacts. Gentrification strips away the diversity and vibrancy that makes Scarborough special. We cannot allow this government to bulldoze our values. It's a rush to build faster. We have also seen resistance from municipalities, rightly so concerned about their role being diminished. Collaboration is essential to successful project execution. If municipalities feel undermined, the result is tension, Madam Speaker, not progress. Despite this, the government is obsessed with the word control over municipalities, over transit, and ultimately over the voices of over 16 million Ontarians. And in exchange for that control, what do we get? Mismanagement, delays, and secrecy. Madam Speaker, the people of Ontario continue to grapple with gridlock, congestion, and a connectivity crisis. They're asking this government, can you finally get the job done on time, within budget, with transparency? Residents across Scarborough-Guildwood and across Ontario want to see local involvement in planning. We are not asking the government for much. We are asking this government to be inclusive at all levels of their planning process. The people of Ontario want updates. They want to be included. They want real consultation, not just press releases and ribbon cuttings. This government's track record in transportation speaks for itself, and we must hold them accountable for the past failures. It is our duty to ensure the needs and voices of vulnerable communities are at the center of every project. As a critic for transportation, I will continue to champion local governance, inclusive planning, and advocating for reliable transit. So in conclusion, while Bill 17 may present opportunities for growth, we cannot overlook the consequences. I hope that this government listens to Ontarians and focuses lens on spending billions on the wrong priorities instead of focuses on getting the job done on time and within budget. We cannot build faster or smarter when the budget is built on the wrong foundations. This is a government that consistently prioritizes press conference over service delivery. And while they brag about breaking grounds, because we always hear breaking ground, but we cannot hear the end of why they are breaking the ground. Riders are still waiting, sometimes years, for the promised train to arrive, The future of Ontario depends on our commitment to accountability, transparency, and community-driven development. Let's build transit that works with our communities, not over them. And I can tell you, I feel so proud and honored being in this House today and representing the people of Scarborough and the people of Scarborough-Guildwood. Thank you, Madam Speaker.